Hi class, the terminal setup video got a bit long, so I added this beginning part. If all you want to do is start the local server, just watch this. If you want more of an overview and refresher on how the terminal works, then watch the rest of the video as well. Command space to open Spotlight, type in terminal, hit enter. I'm going to zoom in here. You don't obviously need to do this. CD, capital D desktop, tab to autocomplete the folder that you want. So it could be MMP210 or another folder depending on what class you're in. Hit enter. Now, if you have Python 2, you say python-m SimpleHTTPServer. If you get an error there, then try the next command, python-m http.server. One of the two of those will work. Once you've got that running, you can go to your browser. I'm going to open a new Chrome window, and the address for the Python server is localhost :8000. Hit enter. You're good to go. You can start working on your project and see everything here. When you're done, just hit Control-C to exit the server. Hi class, this is just a quick tutorial for running a local server using the terminal on the Mac. You need the local server to be running if you have external assets loading into your project. So this is just kind of an overview for any project. Just going to do a quick setup, talk a little bit about how the terminal works, and keep in mind that this only works for a Mac operating system. So I'm going to start by opening the terminal. I usually go to the Spotlight and just type in terminal and hit open. You'll see something that looks like that. You can also find the terminal in the utilities folder. So if I go to the application Spotlight and then go into utilities, you'll find terminal there. And then you can also just look in the applications folder. So if I go to applications and then scroll down to utilities, there's the terminal right there. So those are the different ways you can open it. I typically just go to the Spotlight, which I also access by hitting Command Space, and just type in terminal, hit enter, and it'll open on the screen. The terminal is a text-based interface for the computer. So we typically interact with the computer by clicking on folders and double-clicking on files. In the terminal, we can do basically everything you can do with the mouse, but with text. And so it takes a little bit getting used to, but starting a server is actually very easy. It's just a couple of commands. So if all you want to do is start a server, you don't really need to know a lot about the terminal. I'll go over the commands briefly as I talk about it. So when you first open to the terminal, it should look like this. I'm going to increase the size a bit to make it easier to see in the video, but that's obviously not necessary for you at home. So I'm just going to increase the size of the terminal. And so the main thing that you should see is this tilde, the squiggly line right here. What that basically means is that you're at your username folder in your computer. If I do the command open and then dot, that's going to open the folder that I'm currently in the Finder. And so you can see that folder is actually my username, which just opens up to my desktop, my documents, downloads, etc. So by default, that's where your terminal will open. And so if you have your folders on the desktop, the first thing that you need to do is move to the desktop. So you would do CD and then capital D desktop. Okay, the capital D here is important because that's just what the name of the folder is. So I'll do CD desktop and then hit enter, and you should see that tilde changes to desktop. You can also do the ls command, which will list the folders and files in your current location. And so you can see when I do ls, you see the MMP folders match the folders on my desktop. And you can see I have a couple images and I have a BMCC folder as well. So that all matches there. So we know that we're on the desktop. Another command that you can do is pwd, which will print out the current location of the terminal. Once I get to the desktop, I can then move into the folder that I'm going to be working on. So for example, if I was in MMP210, I would then say MMP210. Obviously for another class or for another folder, you would just use whichever folder name you wanted to open. So finally, you just have to run a server. So depending on what version of Mac you're running, there's two versions of this command. If you have, and one way to check that is just by doing python -version. And so if you have Python 3, then your command is python -m http.server, and you hit enter, and that will start the local server. So once you have the local server started, you can open your browser. I'm going to open up Chrome, and you can see that the port is 8000. So to get there, I would just type in localhost and then 8000. And you can see there are my MMP210 projects. So then when I'm done working on my project, I can close the local server by hitting Control-C, and that will interrupt the server. So another command I can do to get rid of all that stuff is clear. And so if you type in python --version and what you see here is Python 2, then your command is actually the older command. It's python -m SimpleHTTPServer. The case is important here. The capital letters need to be capital, lowercase letters need to be lowercase, and hit enter. You'll see I get an error there, but you'll see what we saw previously with the http.server. You'll see the serving HTTP on port 8000. So I'll put a link to that localhost in the YouTube description, so you can just click on that, or you can type it in. One more thing that I can do, so if I clear and I go back to the username, a lot of times to make things a little bit simpler, instead of doing cd desktop and then cd into the folder, I'll just combine them. So I'll do cd desktop / MMP210 or 310, or whichever folder I want to go into. And one more tip is that if you hit the up and down arrows on the keyboard, it will cycle through your previous commands. So if you've used these commands before, you can, instead of having to type them all again, I can go back to cd desktop, and then I can go up until I get the HTTP server, and that will run the server. And one more shortcut, if I use the tab key, it's going to autocomplete based on what I've typed in. So if I do cd and then capital D, it can't autocomplete that quite yet because there's downloads and documents, but if I put the E there, now it knows it can autocomplete to desktop. And so I can, instead of typing out the entire word, I can just hit tab. And so then for MMP, I can't autocomplete there because I have 3 different folders, but if I put the 2 there, then it's going to know that I'm going to MMP210. So that's another little shortcut that can save a bit of time.